Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, July 17th, 2019, and today we're going to be looking at the 2020 presidential election based off of Donald Trump's approval rating in the year 2020. Obviously, this is the most recent approval rating that we have right now, and that's the one I'm going to be using. That is going to be the June 2019 Morning Consult poll, and the reason why we're using the Morning Consult poll, number one, is because it is one of the few pollsters, actually, that does statewide, polling data, which means that it pretty much can show us how each state feels about Trump, which collects into an overall average nationwide. I just think that it is pretty interesting to cover. Typically, I don't go through this as often as I used to, but it always holds some very interesting results. Essentially, just state by state, we see a lot of things fluctuate, and they're always just interesting to go through. So we're going to go ahead and just pay attention to a number of these states because a lot of them are swing states in 2020, and as you can see on the right, a lot of them don't necessarily have a favorable view of the president at this point. A lot of these safe Republican states, which are definitely going to be safe Republican states when it comes down to the election, don't necessarily have the strongest grip for Donald Trump compared to where it used to be. And the good thing about this interactive tool is that it has a slider from where we started off back in we did start off in January. For some reason, it's not letting me go there. But let's say this is the earliest data that we have. We have a net approval of 6 in New York, 7 in Pennsylvania, 10 in Ohio, solid in Wyoming, solid in Idaho. I mean, he was just doing extremely well nationwide. I mean, he had a positive in Wisconsin, positive in New York, first of all. That's definitely a gain for Donald Trump. He had it more in New York than in Virginia, 16 in Texas, 13 in Arizona, and then as the months went on, it slowly dipped. Now, he definitely had a low point around this time when he was negative in Florida, Utah, a number of these states, but definitely rebounded. 2018 elections came around, rebounded a little bit after that, and now we're at this point. We're pretty much seeing an exact replica, typically around, around election day. Whatever elections come up, 2018, 2017, possibly 2019, Trump's approval rating goes up. But as of right now, Donald Trump is pretty much disapproved of in every single state that currently has a red shade and approved of in the states that have green shades. Now, typically, I start out every single video by filling in the safe Republican and safe Democratic states. We can, for one, fill in the safe Democratic states because I will be doing this by margins. Oregon is negative 18, Washington's negative 28, California's negative 29. Pretty much all of the solid red states are negative states in the safe margin. Illinois joining them. I believe Hawaii as well. That's 5 electoral votes in the Democratic column. I don't know why Illinois moved over. DC, of course, Maryland. Let me check on Delaware. I don't actually think, no, not Delaware. New Jersey, surprisingly, so 15 or more is safe. Maine is not. New Hampshire is. That does not surprise me too much. He doesn't seem too liked in New Hampshire, especially after the things he said probably still linger around there, especially amongst Democratic voters. Now, the thing about Michigan is Michigan and Minnesota both are characterized as safe for the Democratic Party. Obviously, they're not going to be safe when it comes down to Election Day, but as of right now, they're considered safe. So I'm actually going to leave them blank because I'm going to fill in all of the typical safe states, and then we're going to go into the swing states, even if they may be characterized safe by the end of the video. I just want to get through all of the expected safe Democratic states. But as of right now, I guess that's pretty much it for Donald Trump's approval with the safe Democratic states, the ones that we can characterize safe. At least Alabama is a net 24 approval, so that one would be safe for the GOP. Wyoming and Idaho are safe for the GOP. Looking around, it doesn't seem like there are too many states actually where they are considered safe per se. So Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, I'm pretty sure West Virginia would be included as well. I'm pretty sure these are actually the only safe states for Donald Trump based off approval. A lot of these other states are not necessarily approving of Donald Trump too well. So 46 electoral votes that are safe for Donald Trump, 184 that are safe for the Democratic Party as of right now. And then we're going to work our way into swing states after we cover the remaining typical safe Republican seats. So we'll actually start off in Utah. That's actually very surprising. A net approval of 2. Though he has been struggling in Utah for a little bit right now, I did not expect it to be as low as 2. With his national approval rating rebounding, I did not really expect it to be 2. But I guess that's just how it is. Alaska, 3. That puts it into the lean column. We're looking at a lot of these states. Montana and North Dakota would both be characterized as likely just because they are larger than 5%. You go over to South Dakota and Nebraska, 2 more lean states, and that's also pretty interesting. I'd never really expect South Dakota, never really expect Nebraska to be lean states for the GOP. Just sort of a thing that I guess just happens with an unpopular Republican president. But the thing is, he's not too unpopular, which is really surprising to me that these numbers stand. Oklahoma is a likely state. Texas we'll come back to. Louisiana is a likely. 14% though, borderline safe. Really should be safe. Arkansas, 6%, so that one's considered likely as well. Missouri's only 1%. That is also pretty interesting. I don't think these lean states are necessarily going to get close in 2020, just that it is pretty interesting that as of right now, they don't have the best approval of the president. Indiana, where Vice President Mike Pence is from, you really would expect Donald Trump to do well there. And then if you look, South Carolina would be considered a likely Republican seat. So that puts the Republicans at 126. The Democrats are still at 184. Now let's go ahead and go through the swing states. So we currently have 228 toss-up electoral votes. For some reason, I did not fill in Delaware. I think that one is actually a likely Democratic state. So let me go ahead and actually fill that one as likely. But Delaware, and that's the final likely Democratic, I guess, state that we need to cover. Actually, Hawaii. I don't know why I didn't cover Hawaii. Thought I did. Puts the Democrats at 191, the Republicans at 126. Sorry about that, my screen recorder cut out, but I was talking about all of the Democratic states that are considered safe. 191, Republicans at 126. We just filled in Delaware, but now we can move into some of these swing states, as I literally said before. But some of these swing states have very, very harsh attitudes towards the president. If you're looking at the map on the right, there's a lot of red in areas that were a lot of red back in 2016. And if we're looking at them, red isn't necessarily good for Donald Trump this time around. It means that they currently disapprove of the president. And some of these former safe Republican states, or likely Republican states, are now turning against the president, and I think that is pretty interesting. We'll start off with the state of Texas because Donald Trump needs to get his numbers up. To be completely honest with you, at 126 is not a good look going into the swing states. But Texas has a net approval of 4. That's actually higher than Kansas, Nebraska. I think tying with South Dakota, or higher than Utah, higher than Missouri, higher than Indiana. I think that's pretty interesting. Higher than Alaska, even though that one's probably going to be the closest out of them all once it comes down to Election Day. But a positive approval rating of 4% for the president. But let's go ahead and go through some of these swing states. So some of these expected Democratic states, like Virginia, actually only have a negative approval rating of about by 4% in Virginia. I think that is pretty interesting considering a number of other states that were Republican states are not going in the same direction. Colorado is going in that direction. Colorado has negative 12 for Donald Trump in the overall average. Nevada has negative 8. That puts both of those states as likely Democratic states, putting the Democrats at 219 and Donald Trump at 164. If we're looking at some of these other states, as of right now, I guess you could say you could look at some of these other expected Democratic states like Maine, which is at negative 11. That puts it in the likely category. Minnesota, which is actually safe, which I think is pretty interesting. Minnesota typically isn't safe for the Democrats, even though they have some strong candidates some election years. Even then, it typically isn't safe, as in 15% or more. Sometimes with star candidates, they do go that way. 2016 definitely was not the case. Hillary Clinton almost lost Minnesota, actually. Which I think was pretty interesting. But that puts the Democrats ahead of where Hillary Clinton was back in 2016. And now we can actually go through some of these other swing states, like the Rust Belt. Negative 14 in Wisconsin. That is definitely not a good look for the president. That is something that he is going to definitely need to focus on. The Rust Belt he is really lacking in. You know, Wisconsin actually is the second lowest. Michigan is the lowest. Pennsylvania is the least, I guess, disapproved. But with some of these 2020 Democrats, if they're winning in Wisconsin and Wisconsin and Michigan, they're probably winning in Pennsylvania as well. So Michigan would actually go into the safe column, which is really surprising. Wisconsin would go into the likely column, and then Pennsylvania would put the Democrats over the top by going into the likely column. So that puts the Democrats at 279, the Republicans at 164. That leaves a total of 95 toss-up electoral votes. So a total of 6 states, Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And if we look to the right, it doesn't spell out good news for the president either. So we're going to go ahead and actually go through Iowa and Ohio because there are 2 states that were likely states for the president back in 2016. Iowa more than Ohio. What surprises me is that Iowa is considered a likely state. So is Ohio, but Iowa by 5 more percentage points. And that's pretty insane to me considering that Democratic candidates probably won't do too well in either of those two states. As of right now, they currently disapprove of the president, which means that they're probably looking for another candidate. But the Democratic Party doesn't seem to be, resonating with those voters. It really seems like Donald Trump is going to win there again in both of those states, even though it seems that at this point in time, that his voters there may be resentful of Donald Trump, maybe regretting their votes. To be honest with you, that is very surprising to me that he is currently the favorite to win in both of those states, but his approval rating is abysmal in both of those states as well. If we're looking over at North Carolina, a -3 approval rating, that's pretty interesting. That's actually less than Virginia, which is expected, but only narrowly. Arizona is -7, so that goes into the likely column. Florida is -3 as well, joining North Carolina in the Democratic column. And Georgia is a 0 net approval rating. I'm going to give that one to Donald Trump by a tilt margin because that's how I personally would predict the race itself. And I think, I just want to leave the map completely filled in, but I think that's how it's going to end up in 2020. But that leaves 180 electoral votes for Donald Trump and 358 for the Democratic Party. I believe this may actually be the 2008 map minus Arizona, replaced with Indiana, both of which are worth the same amount of electoral votes, 11. But I think that's pretty interesting. So this would be the final electoral map based off Donald Trump's 2020 approval ratings. I guess obviously with the June 19 numbers from Morning Consult. I think that this holds a lot of interesting results as we go into 2020 and look at some of the swing states. But again, I don't think that approval ratings are necessarily a too accurate indication of what we're going to see in 2020, just that they're always interesting to go through the data and make an electoral map from them. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.